What's up everyone, Jeff Miller here, Pinball Pimp. On this episode, we're going to be shopping out and pimping out a 1992 Bally Doctor Who machine. Now, one thing nice about this machine is somebody already installed new cabinet decals, which saves me a lot of time and a lot of money. If anybody knows these Doctor Who machines, they're always faded and the red is gone and they all need a new decal set. Another nice thing about this game is they already installed new color LEDs on the playfield, so that's more time and money. So here's what we're gonna do. The ramp, it looks like it's melted on the left side. I don't know if somebody tried to flame polish it or what, but I ordered a new set of ramps. I also ordered colored rubbers and a few other little things for the playfield to make it look really nice. But one thing I didn't like about this game from the factory is they put on black legs and they left the side rails and the lockdown bar stainless steel. I'm sure that was from the arcade. So we're gonna put some black powder coated armor all the way around this and black it out and make it look really sharp. So let's tear into this thing and make Doctor Who look exceptional again. All right, first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna tear this coin door out and get a couple nice coats of semi-gloss black to match the rest of the powder coating. There's a little bit of finger wear here and where you put the quarter in, also in the coin return, so I just want to even this out and make it look perfect. Now, as you can see, this inner lockdown bar's got quite a bit of rust. That's typical for these games. When the beer seal would go out on the lockdown bar, the liquid would run under the glass and get on this and tarnish or actually remove all the plating. So anyway, I've got spare lockdown bars of mine. So I refinished this one, same era. We're gonna drop that in and that'll look new again. All right, let's dive right in and get this inner lockdown bar taken off and the coin door taken out so I can disassemble it and get it ready for paint. Tearing these WPC coin doors down really isn't that hard, especially when you've done 50 or 60 of them like I have in the last 20 years. All right, we got the coin door all disassembled. We're gonna get this thing in the wash tub, get everything cleaned up and prepped so I can get a couple coats of paint on it. All right, now that I've got this metal hardware all wiped down, it's ready to shoot it with a little paint. I'm shooting it with Rust-Oleum Professional Semi-Gloss Black paint. I'm also doing it in very light coats, that way it all blends together and looks like factory powder coating. All right, well, the new ramps for Doctor Who just arrived today, so let's cut this box open, take a look at them. Man, opening up a new box of ramps is like being a kid on Christmas morning. These things are really gonna make this machine turn out nice. Check out how nice and crystal clear and not a scratch on them. All right, so I'm headed out west tomorrow for a little vacation all week, but before I go, I wanted to get the surrounding head on this repainted black so it looks much nicer. The original person put decals on, but they didn't quite do the head to the paint level that I like, so I'm gonna frog tape off the decals. I'm gonna pull out the speaker panel and the translite and raise this head up, get rid of the hinges off of here so I can get them some paint. We'll tape all this off, get all this sprayed. That way it can dry while I'm gone, and when I get back, ready to tackle the playfield and all those new ramps and powder coating. All right, time to get out the socket wrench and take off the speaker panel, some brackets, and the hinges. That way I can get this head raised up and ready for paint. I used some PVC pipe couplers to raise the head up and keep it from sitting on the cabinet when painting. I also cut a custom piece of cardboard that I stick in the head that covers all the electronics so I don't have to tape everything up. Now I'm going to bust out the frog tape and tape up this cabinet to perfection. Then it's time to paint. All right, so we got this thing all sealed up and taped up. Gonna get a couple coats of paint on this, and it's really gonna look sharp. Now that I've let the paint dry overnight, it's time to unmask everything and see how she turned out. When games get to be as old as this one, the front edge of all these heads looks really worn and the faded black paint just doesn't look that great. So taping everything off and giving it a nice semi-gloss sheen really brings the life back into these machines. I'll also go ahead and install the new lockdown bar and then put in that freshly painted new coin door that looks spectacular. All right, so all the black paint work is done and it really came out nice. I went ahead and cleaned the dome and I put a new holographic decal on the back. I also put the new lockdown bar in and got the coin door installed and it really looks nice. The other day I put the decals on the new ramp so they're ready to go. So the only thing we have to do now is start tearing into this playfield and pimp it out. All right, first screw taken out and about 100 more to go. So let's start ripping down this playfield and getting it all cleaned up. As with most playfield teardowns, the first thing you have to remove is all the ramps. That way you can get to the entire playfield underneath. All right, I'm about a third of the way done on this playfield, so let's just keep on going. Now it's time to remove this crazy 3-level mini playfield. It's being stubborn trying to get it out of the hole with 5 wires attached. All right, now time to knock the dirt, grime, and ugly off this machine before I can start polishing it. second step is to use the magic eraser and alcohol to get any embedded dirt out of the playfield before I start polishing it. Now to finally polish the playfield by hand using Novus 2 fine acrylic scratch remover. The clear coat on this playfield was called a diamond plate, which held up very well over the years. Now that the playfield's been polished, it's time to put back on all the new posts and rubbers. All right, just a few more items to screw back on and this playfield is completely back together except for the new ramps. All right, so we got the entire playfield stripped down, polished, rubber put back on, and about 80% of everything reinstalled. Only thing I have to do is put on the new ramps and the time expander module, which I need to work on that as a separate little project. But I went ahead and got all the hardware off the ramps so I could get those in the evaporust. I have to transfer that back over to the new ramps before I put them back on. But it's Sunday. I'm gonna call it a day and go watch a little NFL. We'll pick this project up later. Now it's time to transfer all the old metal hardware from the old ramps over to the new ramps now that they've been cleaned. I had to bust out the trusty Dremel and cutoff wheel to remove the 3 rivets because I have to use the original factory bracket on the subway ramp underneath the playfield. As with all my games I restore, I like to install a brand new flipper rebuild kit in all my games. The plastic bushings wear out over time, which relates to slop in the flippers and you don't have as much power when playing the game. Now the flippers will feel nice and strong like the game is brand new. All right, flipper rebuilds are done. So there's the left flipper, there's the right flipper, and there's the other left flipper to go up the ramp. So this project's done. I'm gonna put down the hood, line up these flippers to the ball guides, and tighten everything up. All right, onto the mini playfield, which is a job in itself. I need to tear the whole assembly down to install the new colored post, bulbs, and clean up all the metal hardware. I'm going to give all the hardware a nice bath in my bucket of Evapo-Rust. That way when it comes out, it'll be nice, shiny, and clean. One of the problems with this game was the motor and gearbox wasn't working properly to raise the mini playfield up and down, which needed to happen in order to play this game properly. So the only solution was to spend over $200 and buy a new motor and gearbox, which I'm going to install now. I'll put the slide assembly all back together and grease up all the bearings, and it will move nice and freely again. Now that the lower mechanism is all put back together, I can move back to the top side and put it all back on, and then be done with this mini playfield. All right, now it's time to remove some side rails. And wear out my thumb trying to remove all this double-sided tape. All right, now that we got the mini playfield reinstalled, we're going to put on the new ramps, put on the inner art blades, and the black trim on this machine, and we'll finish this thing up. All right, now it's time to reinstall $350 in brand new ramps, and boy, do they look nice. Now it's time to get these inner art blades installed. It takes a little time to get them lined up properly, but boy, once they're down, they really look sharp. I've installed some new double-sided tape so we can reinstall these new black powder-coated side rails. I'll go ahead and reinstall the freshly painted hinges onto the head, then we can move on to the new legs. Now that the legs are on, I'll install a custom designed set of instruction cards. Put on the new black lockdown bar. And dump in the 3 polished balls, and this machine is done and ready to play. So after 30 to 40 hours, I kind of lost track. I finally got this Bally Doctor WHO up and running perfectly, and boy does it look good back in black. Only thing we have to do now is play a game and show you the reveal. Well, here you have it, a 33-year-old 1992 Bally Doctor Who. Well, as you can see, this game really turned out nice compared to what I started with. I acquired this machine as a straight-up trade for the Gottlieb cue ball wizard, which I restored in one of my previous videos. I love how colorful this machine is, especially with the inner art blades and that new black powder-coated trim. Well, that wraps up another episode here at Pinball Pimp BBC headquarters, and I still don't know who the doctor is. Until next time, keep on flipping. Pimp out. If you'd like to see more pinball craziness, be sure to like, tag, share, and follow me at Pinball Pimp.